Thank you. My name's Drew. I'm an alcoholic. Um, I'm a member of the We Are Here virtual group. My sobriety date is June 6th, 1980. Um, I sponsor people who sponsor people. And my sponsor is on this meeting along with my wife. So they're both here to keep me honest. And I know that they both have sponsors and they're my two most trusted people in the program. So there we are. Wow, listening to those promises, I just love those more all the time. They have changed from something that hung on a wall that I looked at in the beginning and I said, oh, that'll never happen to me, to something I look at now and I say, well, have I been working my program well enough that this is leaving me? Or why isn't this, you know, not, why is this bothering me when it shouldn't be? And it's all focuses back on how well I'm working my program. And I try to do that to the best of my ability all the time. I try and do, as one of the outside pieces of literature says, I try and surrender as much of myself to as much of God as I understand. And if I do that all the time, and if I don't drink and go to meetings, um, I'll stay a pretty happy guy. Um, so about me, I was born many years ago and into a loving family. Both my parents were there my entire life. It was back in the day when dad went to work and mom stayed home. So that's what happened. Um, Grew up in, like I said, a very loving family. I didn't get everything I wanted. I certainly had everything I needed. And no matter what it was, I was just not all there for myself. I just felt a little bit different. I didn't really want to have what you had. I wanted more. And to say this is a disease of more is a true understatement because it really, really is for me. Um, I just never really fit in. Elementary school, again, this was back in the day when guys were judged on how well they could play ball. I wasn't a great ball player. It didn't matter that I was good in school. I wasn't a great ball player. So, hey, a little bit on the outside, not fitting in all the way. And that is true inside my head. I don't know how that true really was, how true that really was in the real world. But I felt that way, and that was how I felt. Um, Grew up in Mount Vernon, New York, about the time that there were a lot of racial problems, a lot of economic crap going on with building new schools and busing, and things were not going smooth in the town. And my parents had decided to move. And that was right around the time that I had an accident and I lost the sight in my left eye. Now, as I said, I didn't really fit in. And finally, by eighth grade, I had found a group of about 6 guys, and we were all the same. And we didn't have a problem with religion, with race, with any culture, with anything. We were really together. And then I had my little eye accident and we moved. And that little clique that I finally found after all those years that I fit in with was gone. So here I am, a little wounded, moved to a town about 25 miles away, started a new ninth grade in a school where I knew absolutely no one. No one knew me. And if you ever want to feel like an outsider and you're a budding alcoholic or an alcoholic in training, someplace where you know no one. It's not the best place to feel warm and fuzzy and welcome. And that's how high school went, all of high school. But I did discover that there were guys who would sneak out and have a cigarette behind the gym or behind the gym wall. And some of those same guys would say they were going to the movies Friday night and drink a lot of Budweiser. And the drinking age was 18 in New York. And everybody had a big brother except me. So there was always beer to be had. And that was, for the most part, that's what we did, is we snuck out of the house or we got out of the house, hung around with the wrong kind of people, got into trouble, got caught by the police now and again, drank a lot of beer, got very sick, got chewed out at home and grounded. And, once the month was up, you go out and do it again. What else? My first drink was actually when I was about 6 years old. I drank a glass of my mom, their dad's Manhattan. And it was sweet and it went down somewhat easily. And I got drunk. Saw double. I staggered around. I threw up and I passed out. And I got to tell you, just about all my drinking was a mirror of that. It didn't change. It just varied. Nothing ever good. Nothing ever good came out of me going out and drinking for a night. Well, long about my junior year in high school, I figured I better get serious if I wanted to get into college. And I switched. I dropped all my friends and I found a whole new set of friends and supposed friends. And these guys didn't drink and they didn't smoke that much, but they studied a lot and they got good grades. And somehow I thought hanging out with them would help me out, and it probably did. With all the junk and all the garbage I was pulling, my grades really weren't that bad. I was the second kid my senior year to get accepted into a college, and I thought I was just too cool for anything. I didn't have to worry the rest of my senior year. Everything was okay. Let's party on. And I did an awful lot of that. Got in a lot of trouble. Dad took the car keys away a few times. Well, it was his car. Just because I was driving it drunk and parking it funny on the lawn, I didn't think it was a big deal. He did. But got out of high school, messed around with a theater group that summer because that's where some of the more attractive girls that I was sort of chasing were spending their summers. And had a lot of fun, did a lot of drinking and partying. And then I realized come that September, when I went off to Boston to go to college, that I had made one of the dumbest mistakes an alcoholic could ever make. I was a month away from being able to drink legally in New York, and I just moved to a state where the drinking age was 21. And that is not a sharp move if you're planning on a big drinking career. So, there are ways around everything. So I started pledging 2 fraternities so I could go and drink at the fraternities, which I did a couple of times. But I also joined a theater group again, because Friday nights after rehearsal and whatever, they all went out to eat and drink. And that morphed into the next best thing you could do as a freshman living in a dorm who can't drink was I talked my way into a girlfriend who was 21 and had her own apartment. And the manipulation and the lies and the bull and all of that. Just, it really started growing in this alcoholic. I was away at school. I could start all over again. In high school, most people called me Andy, which I hated. When I hit college, I started calling myself Drew. And for the most part, I was doing really well. I was enjoying it. I was liking what I was doing. There was nobody telling me what I had to do and not had to do. If I messed up, it was all on me. I couldn't blame my parents. I couldn't blame the dumb teacher. It was all me. And for a while, that went along really, really well. I was an accounting major, finance major, and I liked what I was doing. It was interesting, and I was good at it. Along the way in this theater group, I acquired a girlfriend, and I'm not sure why I acquired this girlfriend, except I kind of felt she and I got along well at the time. And I kind of figured nobody would ever care for me again if I didn't stick with this particular girl. And that was, another real dumb mistake on my part. And we wound up getting married my senior year of college. I graduated with honors. I got a job at the right firm, one of the top CPA firms in Boston in the world. Produced 2 children, and I went through all kinds of crap that alcoholics will go through. I drank whenever I could. I tried not to show up too hungover, but that happened. I did become a daily drinker really quickly. I also discovered, and I truly at the time believed that I discovered the morning drink and that would work for me. And on and off it did. We had 2 children. She wanted a house, so we had to buy a house. And then I got fired from that job. I didn't really get fired. I was encouraged to resign, let's put it that way. It sounds better anyway. Then I went to work for a client. And again, I went from another geographic change. All of a sudden, I was the fair-haired guy again. And I did a lot of good, interesting work there, and I really did like it. I liked a lot of the people I worked with. The hours were insane, but I really didn't mind. And my disease kept up with me. It really did. It was pushing me all the way. I would get to work, and no matter how much I liked what I was doing, once I was there, I couldn't wait to leave. And once I got home, I couldn't wait to get back to work the next day. And again, I just was unhappy. I didn't belong. I didn't fit. Now, and I know I'm using this word a lot, but because I was the only one important in this whole big picture. And my ego was so shot and out of whack, it wasn't funny. I thought I had a bar. It was a metal cabinet, with 2 doors on it, and that's where you put the booze. And I got in more and more trouble at work. I was invited to talk to somebody who was in the company, who was in the program. I never did find out who. And time just went on that way. It was just one miserable day after another. No matter what I did, I still wasn't happy inside. Something was missing. And I talked to the few people that were there who really took an interest in somebody, an interest in seeing them get well. And I just walk out numb. I got nothing out of the whole thing. Um, and then one night I was drunk at home and rambling on, and the my ex-wife, my then wife, um, had me committed. So I spent a couple of weeks in a nut house. And all they ever did was ask me, why did I drink? And I had this whole litany of garbage excuses as to why I drank and what was my relationship like with my father. And the words Alcoholics Anonymous were never used. Meetings were never offered. Everything was group therapy. And I finally signed myself out against medical advice. Got a ride home, started drinking again. And during the rest of my tenure at that company, um, I went to a rehab twice. Started to get the feeling that there might be some hope in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't really know. I didn't really understand what they were saying. But when I got back from that rehab the second time, my boss, Larry, uh, when I didn't show up for work because I was drunk again, called me up, fired me over the phone. And at the time, of course, you hated him for what he did. But the reality was that he probably did me an awfully big favor in doing that. Over time, he and I reconnected. And we traded Christmas cards and letters until he died about 2 years ago. And we're talking, I left that job in the 80s. So we did really build a friendship afterwards. And part of my amends later on was to go back and to thank him for what he did. And to thank him for, and to apologize for the pain that I put him through. And we developed a real nice friendship. He was one of the guys that I can truly say that I grew to love. But here I was now. I had no job. My wife kicked me out. The car wasn't running too well. I had really no place to live, no income. So what's one to do but drive back home and impose myself on mom and dad yet again? And I did that. And they were none too pleased over anything that happened. Not that I was thrilled with it, but I can recall my dad saying to me, and this hurt when he said it, and I know where it came from, but it hurt. And he said, you used to be the person that we could count on, the person who was responsible. And we can't count on you for anything anymore. And, he was right. I don't like that he said it. I don't like the way it was said. I don't like the way he had to say it, but he was right. So, with all my great dreams of grandeur and all my ego kind of falling apart, I just kept drinking. And finally, they said, listen, you got to go to AA or you got to go to another institution. You have to do something. And it was like, okay, I'll go to AA. And I started going back in New York to a few groups in Westchester County. The Mamaroneck group was the one I joined. And I went there and I tried to BS everybody the same way. And they knew exactly what they had on their hands. The same way any of us with any amount of time would know when we're getting tossed around. I had all my stories about how the world had treated me wrong, how I shouldn't have been fired, how she shouldn't have thrown me out, how on and on and on. All of this junk, and all it was all of the debris that alcoholism gives me, and drags around. I feel like, Bob Marley with all of the chains and everything as he's dragging around with him. And that's really the way a lot of stuff was. So I went to meetings and I went to meetings and I went to meetings. If nothing else, it was a good way to get out of the house. And if you're really trying, you can drink before a meeting, you can drink during a meeting, you can drink in between meetings, and you can certainly drink after a meeting. And I tried all of them and I did all of them. Once I wasn't drinking, we had one gambler in the group, and he used to tell me that the odds were 8-5 against me ever making it. And my attitude was, screw you, Harry, I made it. You lost, I won. And it didn't really matter. What happened was I kept going to meetings and going to meetings and going to meetings, and drinking just about all of the time I was doing that. And I woke up one day, and I don't know why it was any damn different. And I didn't drink that morning. And I didn't drink that afternoon. And I went to a meeting that night without a drink in me. And nobody noticed anything different other than that I was quiet. And I got up the next day and I didn't drink. And I went to another meeting. And why it happened to me that day, and why my higher power, who I didn't even believe in, gave me a gift of the first day of sobriety and the second day, and why it was then, and why it was given to me and not someone else, I'll never understand. All I can do is say thank you for that. And the gratitude that I look back on to all of the people who helped me, to my higher power, it's just, it's overwhelming at times. After about 2 weeks of not drinking and going to meetings, I had gotten a sponsor, a guy named Bill, and they called him Sweet Old Bill, S-O-B. And he was a no nonsense, no garbage type of guy. He noticed that I wasn't drunk at meetings anymore, and we talked a little bit. And he said, well, if you can get to meetings and if you're okay, you can make coffee and you can set up chairs and you can wash ashtrays and you can be part of this group. And my head said, wash ashtrays, set up, come on. And I was told, no, that's the way you start out. And so I had Saturday night, which was our open meeting. And the rule was you find every folding chair you could in the church and set it up. And it wasn't making one pot of coffee. It was making at least 3 urns of coffee every Saturday night. And it was a smoking meeting at the time. So there were 80, 100 ashtrays to be washed after every meeting. And Bill got me into this stuff up to my neck. And he also told me that one of my jobs is, once this was going, was to say hello to anybody new who came in. And all right, I can do that too. And he started me doing that. And it was, I don't know, I was doing it with another guy who was same amount of time I had. And I kept saying to Bill that, gee, this guy I'm working with, Pete, he is so angry. And it was like, yeah. Just set up the chairs and don't worry about him. Take care of yourself. Well, Pete had an anger problem. And just as an aside, I found out that you can't throw a folding chair like the entire distance across an auditorium and have it land almost at the other wall if you try hard enough. And fortunately, I didn't get hit with his folding chair when he threw it. But I discovered that there's a lot of anger in this program that way. And it wasn't directed at me, it was there. So I did that for a while, and Bill asked me if I really thought I was powerless over alcohol, and it was yes. Yeah, Bill, I know I'm powerless over alcohol. I didn't understand everything that meant. I knew as long as I wasn't drinking, nobody was yelling at me. I knew I wasn't getting sick. It's hard to say you're in control of your life when you're throwing up every morning. And I was no longer doing that. So I guess there was a little bit of sanity returning. And I set up chairs and I made coffee and I greeted people. And I did everything I was asked to do in that group. And it just went on and on and on and on. And it seemed like forever. It was probably about 3 months or 4 months, I'm not sure. And that's when I did something that Bill really didn't approve of. I met this cute little girl in a meeting. Green eyes, auburn hair. Really, really attractive girl. And we started hanging around together. And her sponsor didn't like it. My sponsor didn't like it, but it seemed to be working, and they weren't physically separating us or anything. But the one thing that we agreed was that our AA would come first, no matter what. And that whether we, dated for 2 months or 10 years or whatever it was, we were not to put anything before AA. And we wound up, you know how those things go. We got married after 14 months, 16 months, I'm not sure exactly. And our sponsors weren't happy with that. And the group was sure we were going to just fall apart. And everything's wonderful. It's like 43 years now, I think. And life is wonderful. We both worked the program very hard, and I'm not going to take my wife's inventory, but I know she does. And Bill started taking me through the steps. Not super fast, the way a lot of groups do now. The second step hit me over the head. Actually, at a second step meeting on a Friday night, it dawned on me that if I listened to you guys, if I did what the people I respected in the meeting do, if I tried to act the way they acted, if I made them my higher power, not permanently so much, but if I did what they were doing, I could have sort of what they have also. And I started listening to all of them a whole lot more intently than I ever did before. And I think every one of them is long past now. But those guys saved my butt. And they taught me what a higher power was. And they taught me that I could rely on a higher power for a lot of stuff. And we had a place we used to go for ice cream and coffee after the meetings every night. And we would have a meeting before the meetings. We would have our meeting. We would have our meeting at this restaurant diner. And sometimes those after meeting things would go on until they closed at 1 or 2 a.m. And that was every night. We'd sit there and talk that long and that late. And Bill asked me one night, he said, "Hey," he said, "do you really think that your life has changed that much since you've been coming to AA?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it's this and that." He said, "Well, no. Your life, how you feel with your insides, all of that." And I said, "Yeah, a lot has changed." And he said, "Do you want more of that?" I said, "Yeah, of course, Bill." Discovered that I was a very greedy person. And Bill says, okay, so why don't you make a decision that you want more out of this program? And it was, yeah, okay, Bill, not a problem. Good. And he says, all right, go home and start writing tomorrow. Fourth step, start with the words, I was born, and keep writing until you've got nothing left to say. And it was like, but, all of a sudden, 1,000 excuses. And I don't know if I have a pen or how do you want it? He says, just write, just write. So I did. But first I had to procrastinate the appropriate amount of time. And finally, one day I sat down and I wrote, and I did it the way he did. I said, I was born, and we just kept going. And when I ran out of stuff to say about 7 or 8 hours later, I can't say that I was pleased. I didn't look back and reread. I didn't change anything. I did what he told me to do. And what I found on that pile of paper was a guy that I really did not like. It was a guy that my ego said I was not. It was a person I wouldn't hang around with. It was a person with a whole lot of problems, all of them stemming from fear, from ego, from I want, from I'm better than you. You picked a character defect that was thrown in there somewhere. And I didn't want anybody seeing this, so I did the only smart thing is I folded it up, I put it in an envelope, I addressed it to my sponsor, I put postage on the envelope. In case I got hit by a bus, somebody would mail it. And he knew most of it's junk anyway. And about 2 days later, we sat down and did the fifth step. Now, take a step back. When I lost eyesight in one eye when I was 13, there were a bunch of doctors, a lead doctor and 2 or 3 residents who were taking care of me, looking at me, working on me. And I can use names because he's gone now, but there was a Dr. Regan there, and he was a pain in the ass. He would come in, he'd just falling asleep at night, and he'd want to look at you one more time. And he was always grumpy and nasty. And that was my sponsor all those years later, that same guy. So we did the fifth step in his office. And his office was a typical Harvard doctor's office. He had the massive giant desk with the big chair, and I had like the little folding chair sitting in front of the desk. And all around the whole room, he had models and pictures of eyeballs. And these eyeballs were all watching me. And it was the most eerie feeling going. I'm in a room and it's not people, it's eyeballs watching me. And to this day, it creeps me out a little bit. But I read him that fourth step. And I thought, he was going to have some great words of wisdom and fix me or something. And when we were done, he told me what some of my defects were like. But I noticed on the bottom of the page where he was taking his notes that he had been doodling a lot. And not every word I said was of real great import to him. And probably most of it wasn't. We left the meeting, and the big book says you go home and you find a quiet place and you sit down and you review the first 5 steps. I had to get to a meeting because I had to set up folding chairs and make coffee and all of that. So I didn't get that opportunity to sit peacefully and do anything. But we rushed off to the meeting, setting up the folding chairs. And my sponsor's sponsor said to me, "So you did your fifth step?" I said, "Yes, Harry." And he said, "Good, welcome to the group." And that struck me. That meant an awful lot to me to be accepted by a guy who had a whole ton of time, like 5 years, and just to be accepted by somebody else in the program. And I'm sort of half watching my time here too. We worked through the rest of the steps, Bill and I, and 6 and 7 I had a lot of problems with because I fully didn't emotionally understand everything in the fourth and fifth step. Intellectually, I got it. On a gut feeling, I didn't got it. And it took me some time to figure it all out. We did a lot of step meetings in the group, so I knew what was coming when the eighth step and the ninth step. And I wrote my list and I said, "Oh, Bill's going to take all these names off of it, so I don't have to worry about them really." But at least it got me to put all the names down that I could think of. And he did take a lot of them off. And he just said, "You're just not as important as you think you are, especially not to all of these people." The biggest thing I got out of doing, of course, eighth step, if you want your telephone to work, you got to pay the telephone bill. So that was a big part of it. But the biggest thing I got out of it was that I'm not that important. I thought I had wreaked havoc and, been a tornado through people's lives. Not really. He told me to stay the hell away from my ex-wife, to write the check and be gone. And that's what I did. And after some time, we got into the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps together. And by this time, I was no longer making the coffee. I was supervising the people who made the coffee. And that means when they didn't show up, I was still making the coffee. So I got this great promotion, see. But it was all right. And Lynn and I left that group eventually and moved on years later. But that's where I got sober. It was called the world famous Mamaroneck Group. There was no ego involved there. But we moved on to other groups, and Bill passed away many years ago, and I got another sponsor. And the greatest thing about this program is that everything we do and everything we go through is based on fact. Somebody else did what we're doing before us. None of this is a theory that we're taking out and going to exploring to see, hey, is this going to work or not? Everything I did, somebody else did before me. Every idea I've had in this program, I've gotten from someone else. And it has just gone, it gets gooder and gooder, as they say. Lynn and I eventually moved again. We bought a house. We started to grow up. I hadn't grown up. I'm still not sure I'm really fully grown. I'm 75, hell, and I still think like a 14-year-old part of the time. And I know part of that's that I'm a guy, but that still goes on. Lynn's daughter asked me to adopt her. She was an adult with children, just a wonderful girl. And she said, "Drew, would you adopt me?" And it was like, yes. And I thought my heart was going to explode at that moment. That's one of the greatest moments
Drew, I think you might be frozen.
He blinked out. I'm gonna wait for 1 second to see if he goes down to Lynn's room and gets on her computer. We're pausing while Lynn goes to see if she can get it back online. Here he comes.
I'm sorry, our internet just crashed. Thank you, Verizon. And we have, I, with them close and with the grandkids, and now we have two great grandkids. Um, it's the family that I never had. It's those feelings of not belonging anywhere have really, as a result of these steps in this program, have gone away. We get to see them several times a week. There is absolutely, nothing that I can complain about in my life. And this is 180 degrees from where I was when I walked through the doors the first time. My life has been a total gift. And it's honestly, it's all due to you guys. It's due to this program. I've discovered a higher power in this program. I've joined a church, and that is one of the biggest parts of my life now is church. It's AA, church, family, and I'm one of the happiest guys going. Dan still calls me grumpy, and I can be, and I know that. And that's too bad. That's what I am. But I guess I'll wrap it up with grumpy. And if I haven't said anything tonight at all that hits anybody, please go to another meeting and listen to someone else, because this program has just got a world and a life to offer us all. And we come in alone and we stick around for a while and become part of the we. So that's about all I got for right now. Thank you so much for asking me, and thanks for listening.